Send the exact same prompt to Claude and to GPT-5. Sometimes you get two completely different answers. One model completes the request. The other refuses. That gap between AI models on the same input is growing, and it is becoming a real problem for anyone building with or relying on these tools. Before we get into the comparisons, it helps to understand that AI refusal behavior is not an accident. It is a design choice. Every major AI lab has made deliberate decisions about where their model should stop. Those decisions reflect different philosophies about safety, usefulness, and risk. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, built something called constitutional AI. The idea is that instead of just training the model on human feedback about what is good or bad, you give the model a set of written principles and train it to critique its own outputs against those principles. Refusal gets baked in at a structural level. What that means in practice is that Claude is trained to be cautious by default. When a prompt sits anywhere near a sensitive category, the model is more likely to decline or hedge. Anthropic frames this as prioritizing safety. Critics frame it as over-restriction. Both descriptions can be true at the same time. GPT-5 reflects a different set of priorities. OpenAI has shifted toward what they call more capable and more helpful outputs. The model is tuned to attempt more requests, to push further into gray areas before declining, and to give users more benefit of the doubt. The guardrails are present, but the threshold is higher. Now let us look at actual comparisons. The first category is creative writing with dark themes. Think morally complex villain dialogue, graphic conflict scenes, or stories involving trauma. Claude will often produce a softened version or refuse entirely. GPT-5 generally completes the request with more fidelity to what was asked. For writers, game designers, and screenwriters, this is not a trivial difference. A model that sanitizes dark fiction is not a useful creative partner for those projects. Several professional writers have already publicly shifted their workflows away from Claude for exactly this reason. The second category is security and vulnerability research. A penetration tester or a cybersecurity researcher will sometimes need to ask an AI to explain how an attack works, to generate test code, or to walk through an exploit chain. Claude refuses a significant portion of these requests. GPT-5 is more willing to engage, especially when context is provided. The argument from Anthropic is that the same information that helps a defender also helps an attacker, so caution is warranted. The counter-argument from the security community is that the information is already publicly available, that refusing it only slows down the people doing legitimate work, and that bad actors find workarounds anyway. The third category is persuasive content. Marketing copy, political messaging, sales scripts, debate arguments for positions the user does not personally hold. Claude adds disclaimers, refuses to write one-sided persuasive content for certain topics, or waters down the persuasive force of the output. GPT-5 leans into persuasion more directly. Here is where the business impact becomes concrete. If you are a company building a product on top of an AI API, refusal behavior is not just an annoyance. It is a reliability problem. Your users expect consistent outputs. A model that refuses 3% of requests in an unpredictable pattern creates support tickets, broken workflows, and lost trust. Developers at multiple companies have started tracking refusal rates as a formal metric alongside latency and cost. When Claude's refusal rate on their specific use case is higher than GPT-5's, that becomes a direct input into the model selection decision. Alignment philosophy aside, lower refusals can translate into better retention numbers. This creates a market pressure problem. If users and developers consistently migrate toward the model that refuses less, AI companies face pressure to loosen their safety policies to compete. That is a race in a direction most safety researchers consider dangerous. The deeper structural issue is that there is no shared standard. There is no agreed-upon framework that defines what an AI model must refuse and what it must attempt. Each company sets its own line. That means the line moves based on competitive pressure, public backlash, and internal policy debates that users never see. Regulators in the European Union and in several US states are starting to ask questions about this. If an AI model produces harmful content, who is responsible? The developer who built the product? The AI company whose model sits underneath it? Or the user who wrote the prompt? The inconsistency between models makes these questions harder to answer. There is also a transparency problem. When Claude refuses a prompt, it often does not explain exactly which principle was triggered. When GPT-5 completes the same prompt, users have no visibility into how close to a refusal boundary the model actually came. Both systems are operating as black boxes on the dimension that matters most for accountability. So which model should you use? The honest answer is that it depends on your use case. If you are building consumer-facing products where safety and predictable caution matter more than flexibility, Claude's stricter defaults may actually serve you better. If you are building for professional or technical users who need the model to attempt difficult requests, GPT-5's higher threshold is often more practical. What you should not do is assume that the model which refuses less is automatically the better or more capable model. Refusal behavior and raw capability are separate dimensions. A model can be highly capable and still refuse certain prompts. A model that never refuses anything is not necessarily smarter. It may just be less careful. The fact that two leading AI models behave so differently on the same inputs also tells us something important about where the AI industry actually is right now. These models are not neutral tools like calculators. They embed specific values and specific judgments about what is appropriate. Knowing which values your model holds is part of using it responsibly. The problem this video started with is not going away. As AI models get more capable and more embedded in critical workflows, the question of where the refusal line sits becomes more consequential, not less. The lack of an industry standard means this will keep playing out model by model, prompt by prompt, and lawsuit by lawsuit. If this breakdown was useful, hit the like button. It helps other people who are trying to understand this topic actually find the video. Subscribe if you want to keep up with practical, grounded takes on AI tools and the real trade-offs behind them. The next video covers how AI companies decide when to update their safety policies and why those updates often happen after something goes wrong. That one is worth watching.